Good evening, everybody. It is Sunday. I hope you had a good weekend. I'm Nate Eaton. Welcome to Courtroom Insider, coming to you live from Phoenix. I had a great weekend exploring the area, going on some hikes and doing some shopping and just really getting to know the Phoenix area, where it has been very warm, but very beautiful. And it's nice to be back here as we head into week number 2 of Lori Vallow Daybell's trial. I guess you could say week number 3, because week 1 was jury selection, but really the trial started a week ago tomorrow. And here is what we're going to talk about tonight: what the jury knows and what is next in this trial. There's a lot that you and I know. There's a ton that you and I know, especially if you've been following this case from the beginning. By the way, let us know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, Peggy's going through the comments and we'll answer your questions at the end. But as I said, there's so much that you and I know, but there's so much the jury does not know. The jury came into this case completely blind. They've never heard of this. It's like they just were dropped here. And I've said this before, but I kid you not, everywhere I went this weekend, people would be like, "Oh, so how's your day going? Or what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm here for work." "Oh, what do you do?" "I'm a reporter." "Oh, what do you do? What are you covering?" "Oh, I'm covering a murder trial." "Really? What is it?" And I tell them, no one is known. No one is known. Very different than in Idaho and Utah, where I've gone. But here it just seems like there's so many people and so many things happening. Then once I tell them the name, for sure, like I was at a store just yesterday and the guy said, "What's it called?" I said, "Lori Vallow." And so he Googled it on his phone and up popped our coverage. I said, "Watch tonight." So guy from Volcom, if you're watching, hi, thanks for watching. But anyway, we're going to talk about tonight what the jury knows and what's next. Specifically, what the jury does know today, what the jury does not know, things that you and I know, but they don't quite know. We're also going to talk about what to expect going forward with this week, being here and most of the prosecution witnesses done. Vinnie Politan from Court TV is here, and he has some excellent insight into this trial. Plus, special guest, just announced, just happened, Erica, my wife, will be joining me. Yes, she hasn't been on this year to talk Courtroom Insider, but she's here. You requested, she's here. We're going to chat. Wait for that. It'll be so exciting. We also have Charles, who's here. Shoutouts and your questions answered. Okay, let's just jump right into it. What the jury knows. There's so much. Let me preface this with there's so many things the jury knows. So many things. And I just went through and picked out 10 that I think are critical. Erase everything you know about the trial, about the trials in Idaho, everything you know about the case, and let's just talk about the vacuum that's happening in the hallway. Just kidding. I don't know if you can hear that. Some of you are going to email me and say, "What's up with your air conditioner?" They just started to vacuum outside. My apologies. I can't control that. Let's talk about what the jury has been shown so far and why it matters. Okay. Number 1, we know that Charles changed the beneficiary of his life insurance policy. We had not one, but 2 witnesses testify of that: Kay Woodcock and Nancy Joe.
Did you have a conversation with Charles about the beneficiary of his life insurance?
Yes, it was early February when I came here to help him with JJ, and he said, "Look, I'm going to take Lori off as beneficiary, and I'm going to put you as a beneficiary." And I was like, we talked about maybe a minute and a half about it, and I was like, okay, whatever. I really don't want to be that person, but okay. And I never followed up to see if he changed. I didn't know until I got the phone call after he was killed.
During any of your conversations with Charles, did you ever learn that he had a life insurance policy?
I did.
As you are talking, did Charles really just tell you a lot about his life?
A lot about his life, yes.
Were you almost surprised at the amount of detail of his life that you learned?
Yeah.
Did you understand whether or not any changes had been made by Charles to the life insurance policy?
He told me that he had changed his beneficiary to his sister, Kay, and as he was proceeding to tell me some of the things that were going on, I suggested to him that maybe he should let Lori know that he had changed the beneficiary on his life insurance to Kay.
Why would you tell him that?
because of the things that he was describing to me and his concerns for his safety and the thought that money would come into play.
So you have those two very strong women testifying that Charles changed his beneficiary. Okay. Then you think as a juror, like, that's pretty key. Why would he change the beneficiary of his life insurance? Something was there. The next thing we know, number two, Lori compares herself to Nephi. Some of you are saying, who in the world is Nephi? And why is Lori comparing herself to Nephi? Witnesses were asked those questions. Specifically, Adam Cox was asked to explain who Nephi was, and Trina Kay, the prosecutor, in the first minute of her opening statement, she brought up Nephi and Lori comparing herself to the prophet Nephi.
So I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple days. Mel, too. She can't go to Utah. They're planking some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way, so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and secure it. Lots to do. Thanks for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. Lori Daybell, the woman seated over here, wrote this to her brother Alex Cox on July 9th of 2019, 2 days before they killed Charles Vallow. Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Alex Cox all believed that those who disagreed with them were dark, possessed by evil spirits, sometimes called Z's or zombies. Sometimes they had names for these evil spirits like Ned. Lori, Chad, and Alex used religion, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and a story of Nephi, a prophet, who was directed by the Holy Spirit to kill Laban, to obtain brass plates and secure the long-term prosperity of Nephi's descendants. Lori used this religion and the story of Nephi as justification to kill Charles Vallow, just like Nephi killed Laban. On July 9th of 2019, Lori Vallow invoked Nephi when she messaged Alex to provide them with that religious authority to kill Charles. After months of trying to get rid of him, they were finally ready to be like Nephi. You told us that you are LDS. Have you ever taught Sunday school?
Yes.
Can you tell us about the story of Nephi?
Nephi? Well, Nephi was a prophet in the Book of Mormon. It's the first chapter. He was a prophet, very humble and faithful servant of the Lord. Ironically enough, his brothers tried to kill him at one point. But he actually ended up going to Jerusalem to get these plates back, and he was run off, came back, and then went back again because the Lord asked him to. And when he did, the King Laban, who was actually a wicked king, was laying on the ground drunk in front of him, and Nephi was told to kill Laban.
Who was he told by?
The spirit, or God.
So for any of the jurors who don't know who Nephi is, now they do. They understand the relevance of Nephi to this case and why Lori was comparing herself to Nephi. Third thing we know so far from this case, that Lori believed and told people that Charles was possessed and she was trying to cast out evil spirits out of his body.
Do you recall having Lori ask everyone to help cast out as to a specific person?
Yes.
Can you tell us who that was?
It was her husband, Charles.
Did it stand out to you, her asking you to cast out as to her husband?
Yes, it stood out to me.
During this weekend, did Lori talk to you about her husband, Charles Vallow, being possessed?
Yes, she did.
What do you recall about her talking about her husband being possessed?
I recall that she spoke about her husband being possessed by an evil spirit, and she named the evil spirit.
Do you recall what the name was?
Yes,
What was it?
it was Ned.
Did Lori still express that her husband, Charles, was possessed?
Yes.
The fourth thing that they know is that Lori vanished in early 2019, had an affair with Chad Daybell, and Charles wanted a divorce.
When you came out here, did you see Lori?
No,
When you came out here, did anyone know where Lori was?
no, nobody was talking about where she was. Nobody would tell Charles where she was.
So your brother was trying to find where she was?
Yes, he was.
How long did Charles have JJ where he's looking for Lori and can't find her?
Well, that portion of the time was 58 days, and I knew how many days it was because every day Charles would say something. He would tell me.
But he was counting them.
He would count them.
Did you know he was still married?
He told me he was in the process of a divorce.
Okay. Did you know whether or not he was living with his wife at that time?
He was in Houston. His soon-to-be ex-wife was here. When he came to Arizona, he was meeting a realtor to find a place to live when he was here as well.
And again, those are things also that text messages could bring in. The fact that in the email that Charles Vallow sent to Tammy Daybell saying, I know that your husband is having an affair with my wife. And this is the email. I have a feeling this next week we'll hear more about text messages and emails. And we'll hear, I assume, from the guy that lays out Lori's movements right after Charles was shot for that hour, that morning of July 11th. He testified in Idaho with great maps pinpointing the locations, and I have a feeling, well, he's on the witness list, so I imagine they'll do that again. So we know, the juror knows so far, just think in your mind if you only know these four things. Charles changed the beneficiary of the $1 million policy because he was worried for his life months before he died. Lori believes she's a prophet in the Book of Mormon, or like a prophet, and she must do as the Lord's command. This specific prophet killed someone who was evil. Lori believes Charles is evil. He's possessed. She's trying to cast evil spirits out of him. Lori vanishes, has an affair, and Charles wanted a divorce and was telling people this marriage is over because it's too far gone, and was taking steps to have her lose her temple recommend, the most important thing to her. The fifth thing that the jury knows so far is that Charles and Adam were planning an intervention. I mentioned the temple recommend thing there just a minute ago. Adam talked about this.
Did Charles have some idea on how he thought he might be able to get Lori back into the LDS faith?
Yes.
What did you understand that to be?
Charles just thought that Lori was going overboard and that she was going to the temple like 5 times a week, and that's not normal in our religion, and that she was going a little off the wall. So he figured that if she got her temple recommend taken away from her, that she would come back to normal, who she was before she started in all this things that she was believing.
And of course, Adam went on to talk about that he ended up not seeing the stake president, the person who could take away that temple recommend, because the stake president was not at the church the night that Charles died, and then Charles died and everything obviously changed at that point. So the jury is aware that there was some sort of intervention planned, that Charles was taking all of these steps, was worried for his life, and then was killed. These things are stacking up bit by bit by bit. The puzzle is coming together, puzzle piece by puzzle piece. Another thing the jury knows, we know about that he played baseball and the bat. What was specifically on the bat? We heard a lot of talk about the bat, that allegedly he hit Alex in the back of the head and caused him to have a little bit of blood on his head, even though he had sunglasses that never came off when he came out of the house that day. We know a little bit about that, but really when it comes down to it, the expert from the police department testified about the thumbprints, the fingerprints on the bat. And here, I'll play her clip, but before I do that, here's what Kay Woodcock said about Charles being a baseball player and the bat.
He did, I believe he was drafted in the early 70s into the Houston Astros minor league.
So when you were growing up, did you see your brother playing baseball?
I was raised at a baseball field. If it wasn't Charles, Jerry played for years, my other brother, but Charles stuck with it, and that's how he got to college with a degree, with a scholarship.
So you got stuck many a night and a weekend having to be at the ball field with your brother.
Yes.
What position did your brother play?
He was a pitcher. He was very, very good. He was a left-handed pitcher, and they're very hard to hit against.
Okay. Did he bat right or left-handed?
He was left-handed.
Did he do everything left-handed?
Yes.
For both impressions, in my analysis, I determined that both impressions were NVID, which stands for no value for identification. This means that the latents lack sufficient clarity, quantity, and or uniqueness to identify, but may be suitable for exclusion. So the impressions were possibly excludable, but I would not be able to identify who made those impressions.
So there were the two prints on the bat. Unfortunately, they were not able to match to a specific person. Maybe, I don't know if the material, if someone were to grip it more firm, the bat, and swing, you'd think that maybe there might be more prints on it. You could always wipe them off, though, I guess. But anyway, that's what we know about the bat. The other thing we know, while talking about what was in that house, the bat, we know about the gun that Alex used to shoot Charles, specifically that Alex used to shoot Charles twice. This was one of the very first things the jurors heard with Trina Kay at the beginning during opening statements. Here's what she said.
This is where Alex Cox shot him 2 times. The first shot to Charles Vallow was to his chest. It exited out his back. Charles Vallow fell to the ground. He put his left hand to this wound, and blood transferred onto it. You will hear from the medical examiner that this shot went through his heart, and that a person can take seconds to up to 2 minutes to die from that type of wound. You will hear that a person can still talk and move after they're shot in the heart. And we know Charles was able to move since he put his dominant left hand on his chest and transferred that blood to his hand. You will see that. As Charles lay on the floor of 5531 South Four Peaks Place, Alex Cox stood at his feet and fired a second shot. That shot entered his abdomen, and it exited his left shoulder. The angle was significantly upward. Dr. Baumgartner, who is the medical examiner, will tell you that this wound was shored. You will learn that shored means that there was something hard behind that wound. So when the bullet exited it, it caused a different tearing pattern than the other wound that exited Charles's back. It is this shored wound, this exit on Charles's left shoulder, that shows us that there was nothing accidental about this second shot.
Another thing that we learn is Lori texted people that Charles was dead. What does that mean? She didn't call them. She didn't call Charles's sons to say your dad is dead. She texted them and waited a day.
I was at a nail salon in Lake Charles, my granddaughter and I, and I got a call from his oldest son, Cole, and he said, "Hey, what is going on? I just got a text from Lori, and she said Dad's dead." And I said, wait, what did you just say? And he told me again, and I said, something's wrong with that. That can't be true. And I said, have you tried to call her? And Cole's like, yeah, she won't. I'm trying calling. She's not answering. He was freaking out. And I was like, okay, Cole, just give me a minute. Let me think about this. Let me see. And I'll call you back. I promise. As soon as I can figure this out. So I called my husband to tell him, and he said, okay, well, I told him what the Cole said, and he said, hey, let me call you back in a minute. And so I was still at the nail salon trying to get out of there. And he called and he said, he's dead. I Googled him and he's dead. Alex killed him yesterday. And I mean, that was just like, it was horrible. I have to call my siblings and let them know. Thank you. And everybody was freaked out. I didn't know what to do. But I did call Cole back and let him know that it was true, and just was telling him, let's keep in touch. You find out something, I find out something, we'll let each other know. And
Did you try to reach out to Lori?
I've tried calling, texting Charles. I tried calling, texting Lori. And at some point she texted me, she returned a text, something like, I'm having to deal with a lot of stuff and I'm busy. And she was too busy to even call his family to say that he was dead by her brother killing him.
I would say that anytime someone on the witness stand cries, the jurors remember. We remember when they get emotional, especially in a trial where there hasn't been much emotion. Lori cried a little in her opening statement. Kay really cried. And that's memorable. Now, if someone's up there crying the whole time, you're going to remember them as an emotional witness, but we haven't seen that. So Lori texted people to say that Charles was dead. Another thing we know, Lori and Chad are married. And that was brought about, again, with Trina Kay in her opening statement, talking about how Lori Vallow wanted to be with Chad Daybell.
In July of 2019, Lori Vallow was married to Charles Vallow. Lori Vallow lived here in Arizona, Chandler. Charles Vallow lived in Texas. In July of 2019, Lori Daybell was Lori Vallow, married to Charles Vallow. In July of 2019, Lori Vallow wanted to be Lori Daybell, wife of Chad Daybell.
So we know that Lori and Chad are married, but we'll get to it in a minute. The jury doesn't know. We know, they know, but they don't know where her husband is now, her fifth husband. They might be waiting for him to testify. They might be waiting for him to show up in support of her in the courtroom. They probably have no clue that he's locked up on death row in Idaho. We'll get to that in a second. The other thing they know, Alex is dead. And you know who offered this up? They learned this in the first hour of this trial. Lori Vallow said this.
The evidence will show you that my brother, Alex Cox, passed away on December 12th, 2019, almost exactly 5 months to the day after Charles, my husband, passed away. The evidence will show that Alex passed away from a blood clot in his lung.
Objection again.
I'll sustain the objection. it's not relevant for this matter.
So those are just, the jury obviously knows a lot more. We've been through 12 witnesses. We've had 4 days of testimony. Here is what the jury doesn't know that you and I know if you've been following the case. If you haven't been, I'm about to give you some news. You ready? I'm a news reporter. Here's some news. One, they don't know that JJ and Tylee are dead. That's like the big number one thing of, well, when are they going to find out? How are they going to find out? We'll see if they find out. They don't know that Tammy Daybell is dead. They don't know that Chad, as I mentioned a minute ago, is on death row. They don't know that Lori is serving 3 life sentences in Idaho. They don't know that Chad and Lori fled to Hawaii, refused to talk to the police or the media, yours truly, and were living their best life over there. They don't know that. While their kids were dead in Chad's backyard. And they don't know so much more. Will they learn these things? Well, the judge has said that if Lori testifies, there is a condition or some sort of statement that he needs to tell the jurors about her criminal convictions. The depth of that, we don't know. Will he simply say, just so you know, the defendant is serving time in Idaho on 3 felonies? Or will he say the defendant was found guilty of 3 counts of murder and she's serving 3 life sentences in Idaho with no chance of parole? Because you say that, and the jury is probably like, oh, okay. So we'll see what they learn. They're going to learn a lot over the next week, over the next 4 days. Here's what we anticipate happening this week. First of all, tomorrow, court is starting early on Monday and Tuesday, 30 minutes early. So that's 10 o'clock Arizona time, 11 o'clock Mountain time. And what that means is I'll do those live updates written on East Idaho News and my X account. And what you can expect, though, is that the video feed, rather than starting at the top of the hour, will start at 10:30 Arizona, 11:30 Mountain, 12:30 Central, 1:30 Eastern. So give yourself an extra 30-minute buffer there in the beginning. Judge is doing this because the courtroom that the Judge Boreski is in to do this trial, the judge who's normally in this courtroom, he doesn't have cases on Monday and Tuesday, so he's bumping it up 30 minutes. 9 more witnesses. The state will continue with their prosecution. You think about it realistically, if they do 3 witnesses a day, maybe 4, there's been some days they've done 5. I do think these witnesses, some of them will be a little bit more in depth, like the medical examiner. But you do 3 witnesses a day, they could potentially be done by Wednesday. Then the defense starts the case, perhaps. We don't know. Maybe the defense will start next week. We don't know how in-depth the defense will be. Closing arguments, maybe this week, maybe Wednesday, Thursday. I guess we'll see what the defense does. I think more realistically, it might be next Monday, a week from now, and then the jury gets it. But again, I'm just speculating, and I hate to speculate because I'm always wrong. That's why I'm a reporter who just gives the facts. Another thing, could we have a verdict this week? That would be wild if a week from now we have a verdict. We could, potentially. If they go through all the witnesses, we could, but we will see. And we also know, not this week, but we still have one more trial. That's Brandon Boudreaux, Lori's nephew. Some of you who are just new to this case are like, wait, what? Yeah, there's one more trial. That, for now, is scheduled the first 2 weeks of June. However, the judge met with the attorneys and Lori last week off on a sidebar to talk about scheduling, and I wonder if this trial wraps up in the next week or 2, if he's going to bump it up, and it might be mid-May. So we will see what happens there. So there's kind of what we can expect this week. Now, if you've watched Vinnie Politan on Court TV, he is an attorney who has been in the media for a long time. I mean, he's been on Court TV. Court TV was around in the huge heyday of O.J. Simpson, all that. Then it went away, and then it came back about 10 years ago, and he's been there ever since. He does his show called Closing Arguments every night, and he's followed this case, and he's followed hundreds of court cases. He has an interesting perspective that I hadn't thought about. And we talked a little bit a couple hours ago here on Zoom, and I want to play you that interview. Here is Vinnie Politan. Let's just jump right in. You have been following this case the past week. What are your overall thoughts of Lori Vallow defending herself?
I think surprisingly good, not over the top great, not as good as a lawyer, because there are some potential defenses and issues she has in this case, but much better than most pro se defendants that we've seen who are not lawyers. The opening statement I thought was the one place where she took a moment and got emotional. I don't believe any of this stuff because I know so much and you know so much, but the jury only knows what they hear in the courtroom. So I think it's surprisingly good. I think it's potentially dangerous for prosecutors. So they've got the evidence. They've just got to put it all together and make sure this jury doesn't fall into the trap and believe that Lori Daybell was this doting mother of 5 and this loving wife with a husband. Like all of that's got to go out the door, and that's the job of the prosecution. You got to prove your case.
We see different sides of Lori almost daily. We saw, you mentioned the opening statement where she got emotional. Then we've seen where she tries to be insightful or profound even. But then when the woman that went on a date with Charles the night before he was died took the stand, yes. What did you think of that cross-examination?
I thought it was, you go into a case and sometimes I become a little jaded. I have to forget that you never know what's going to happen in a trial. Like as much as you prepare, oh yeah, I know what this is about. Something happens that you don't expect. And the woman who's on a date with Charles the night before he's shot and killed by Alex Cox gets on the witness stand and Lori is cross-examining this woman. Wow. I don't know what the jury's going to do with it. Again, I think prosecutors really have to make the case that Lori was not in this marriage. Like she had moved on already. But I thought this was an opportunity where, if it was a lawyer doing it rather than Lori, it got very personal, and she wanted to make this woman out to be a villain. She's not a villain. She's a woman on an app looking for someone to date, perhaps looking for someone to spend her life with. There's no evil associated with that. I thought what she could have done, rather than bring out the clause and try to make this woman into, oh, you date married men, rather than go down that road, which is like, okay, you can do that, but like it doesn't really get you closer to where you want to be. In her opening statement, Charles is the villain in the story. Charles is the bad guy. Charles the one with the temper. Charles is the one trying to go after people with a bat. Why not? I think what a defense attorney would have done there is almost, and I think Lori could have been very effective if she bonded with this woman and said, Charles was lying to you too, right? That's the tact where if you want to really win a case and you've picked your villain already, then everything has to be about making him more of a villain. Rather than make her into the villain, make Charles. Charles didn't tell you that we were trying to reconcile, and she has a lot of leeway to do that, right? Charles lied to you. Oh, I feel so bad that you spent all this time and were invested in all these conversations, and he lied to you. He misled you. He didn't tell you this. He didn't tell you that. Oh my goodness, I feel so bad for you. But rather than have that attitude, she couldn't help herself. She is who she is, right? And she was angry that Charles dared to date someone else. And Charles isn't here, so I'm going to go after her.
That's an interesting point. I had not heard, but that makes sense on her behalf if she were to do that. But you're right, she can't help herself.
Help herself.
She also had her brother on the stand and mentioned the green chili enchiladas, which it was kind of an. Why do you think she did that? Any insight?
It was interesting because, she tries to remove herself by referring to him as Mr. Cox when, come on, it's Adam. It's your brother. You guys grew up together. Like you guys have history. You guys know each other. He knows you. You know him. What are we talking about here? And the green chili, again, it's like she gets lost in the moment, doesn't realize the significance of the witness, and then what I saw was really a sibling moment there. It was a sibling moment, and it was coming from him as well. Like Adam was like, would you stop with this already? No. And he's answering these questions. No. And I could hear the rest of what he's thinking, right? Just by watching him. And it was a moment where, again, I don't think she won anything, and she always has the last question, which I think standby counsel probably coached her to write this down. You didn't see what happened. You don't know what happened. Da 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 da. And that's all well and good, but I thought prosecutors did a nice job with Adam and direct, and she didn't do much on the cross, but it came back to that moment. That could be the last time that they ever speak. Like, think about that for a second, right? I mean, I could never think of that like with my sibling. Like, I'm going to speak to him forever, like forever until we can't speak anymore. But this may be the last time they ever interact. And she just had to get the chicken, the green chili chicken enchilada in there. Like, it was going to undermine his credibility. It's like, listen, Lori, I'm not here to talk about your green enchilada chicken. My niece is dead. My nephew is dead. My brother-in-law is dead. Our brother Alex is dead. Like, all these bodies have piled up. Let's not talk about the green chili chicken enchilada. But yeah, that was the takeaway. That was the takeaway, right?
That's what people remember.
Everyone's going to remember that. And when we all remember that, the jury's going to remember that, right? So what does the jury do with the green chili chicken enchilada? I don't know. I think the direct was very effective and painted a nice picture of what was going on with Lori and how she was off the ranch.
Kay Woodcock testified. Everybody thought she would, really go toe to toe with Lori. Everyone was kind of anticipating that back and forth. But again, we saw a different Lori with Kay than we saw with Nancy Jo and her brother. It was a more timid Kay. It was a more timid Lori. And as you mentioned, that final question, did you see or hear me conspire with Alex Cox to commit murder? And Kay responded, no, but I saw a lot of evidence that did.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway from that moment?
Well, I think, I don't know if she's intimidated by Kay, if like she knows that Kay knows like everything.
Right.
And she knows that she murdered Kay's grandson. And I think some of that eked through. But again, I'm trying to analyze, and I'm having a hard time. I don't know if you are too, trying to analyze this trial because there is such history here, and not all the history is going to make it into the courtroom, right? It's not all going to be there. And it's tough for me to have fresh eyes on this. So we have one producer at Court TV who joined our team relatively late, but he knows the story too because you know him as well. I'm using him.
Tommy?
Yeah, Tommy.
Yeah.
So I'm using him really for the Karen Reed case, trying to get fresh eyes on it, like seeing stuff for the first time. What does he think about it? Because once you've been through a full trial, and then it's another one, and this one, it's like number 3. It's hard. It's hard to understand where the jury is, because ultimately those are the only people who matter when it comes to determining a verdict and getting justice for the victim and whatever justice is in the case, which to me is the truth. But how are they seeing all this for the very first time? And that's difficult here, really difficult.
And not knowing about JJ and Tylee being dead, at least yet. I'm sure that will come in maybe. If she testifies, the judge has said that he might need to tell them that she is a convicted felon.
Right.
And they know very little about Chad other than they don't know Chad's wife is dead. Yeah, there's a lot that you and I know that so many of us do that they don't have a clue. And
they know about Alex though. Lori told them about Alex, how he died. Like, hey, I didn't murder him. He just died.
He died 5 months to the day, she mentioned about Charles. How do you think the judge is doing keeping Lori in control? He seems to be fair with her, but also, he's got to walk this line.
Yeah. Well, and prosecutors do also. When you have someone who's pro se, you don't want to steamroll them as a prosecutor, and as a judge, you almost have to take an extra step to make sure that things aren't happening that are overrunning her rights because she doesn't have a lawyer. Like we all get it. Like, she chose not to have a lawyer, but still, that if the case is appealed, everything's looked at a certain way. So you want to make sure that her rights are still upheld. And I think the judge has done a great job. He's a judge who doesn't take over a trial. Like, there are judges like that who like, okay, this is my courtroom. No, he's like, let's let everything happen, but I'll make the calls as I need to make them. The big disadvantage that Lori really has, in a lot of these objections that are taking place and legal things that are popping up is that she doesn't have access to the arguments to make. So prosecutors are winning a lot of these, and some of them that they're winning, could be in the toss-up column if there's a lawyer making an argument, but she's not able to make those arguments, and I think that's where she has a disadvantage. Where she has the advantage was the way she took advantage of things in the opening statement, to try to create a filter for this case that, hey, jury, as you're looking at this, I'm a mother and this is a family tragedy, and Charles is really bad. Charles is bad. Charles did not like my daughter and he would go after her. Oh my goodness, great. And I thought she did that well. But then when you get to the nitty-gritty, witnesses testifying, legal rulings, etc., that's where there's a huge drop-off.
You think she takes the stand?
Well, she's been able to sort of testify, but I think she will. I think.
And does it help her?
I think she told it. Well, here's the problem, right? Like, she told the story to the jury in her opening statement.
Right.
Opening statement is not evidence. Now, if she doesn't testify to back up her version of what happened there could be an argument that she couldn't argue some of the things that she talked about in her opening statement. Like, there has to be evidence of what you say happened for you to argue that that's what happened. Obviously, there can be reasonable inferences from some of the evidence, and if you can get other things in, you might have a workaround. But everything she said in her opening statement is basically a preview of her testimony, because there were 5 people there that day, and 4 of them are dead, right? And the only place it's coming from is going to come from her. So unless she's able to get in, get it in sort of through the back door, I don't think the defense will be that sophisticated. I think the defense is predicated upon her testifying and telling the jury what happened. And she's the only living witness to what happened. So there's not going to be someone to, contradict what she says. So unless she's contradicted by her own prior inconsistent statement somewhere, but I think it's set up for her to testify, and I think she wants to. And I think that'll be a pivotal part of the case, because that's where a lot of her version of what happened that day, and perhaps her version of what was going on in her life, she'll have an opportunity to address.
But that also does then allow the prosecution to actually have her under oath to answer questions that she hasn't really answered for 5+ years.
I know. Well, sometimes when I say I think they're going to testify, it's like me also saying I want them to testify, because
I'm with you.
I want these moments. And for me, every time I cover a trial, what people say, well, what do you think of this? What do you want to happen? What I want is for the truth to come out. And I always think anytime a criminal defendant testifies, we get closer to the truth. I think it's better for the jury. Now, obviously, we know all about the constitutional rights and protections that every defendant has and the burden that's on the prosecution. But I try to evaluate cases through the jury, the jurors who we bring in. These are just regular folks who get that notice in the mail and they come down and they're performing their civic duty. But that job is ultimately to figure out and tell us what happened. So the more information that they have, I think it's better. And when a defendant testifies, I think it gives the jury a better opportunity to get to the truth.
Vinnie, always great talking to you. You have such good insight, especially because you have been following this from the beginning, from the day that Lori and Chad were in Hawaii, and here we are.
Well, let me tell you how we found this story, because I don't know if I ever told you. So we have Court TV has a bunch of affiliate stations around the country that are owned by the same parent company as us. So when we first launched, what we would do every day is we have like 44 stations. So there were like 3 of us working on the show, me and 2 producers. And we each took 15 stations, and we would look at what they were reporting every day. And there was a report on this story, but it was the weirdest story. It was a story about the woman who was the model for Chad's book covers.
Really?
It was like, and I'm not sure if it was the Arizona affiliate or if it was our
Or Boise could have been KIVI in Boise, maybe.
Right. It could have been Boise, it could have been Arizona, or it could have been out in Idaho. And then we started finding other stories from different affiliates on this. We're like, what's going on here? And then it took us like a good month, and then you being so kind and coming on my air on one of our shows, and like we locked you down for like, I don't know, like 45 minutes. And after that interview with you, all the pieces, as much as they could, sort of came together for us, and we kind of understood this unreal story for the first time. But the first time we came across the story was it was a story about this woman who was the model for Chad's book covers. And we watched the story, and we watched it like 3 times, a local package, and we're like, there's something going on here. There is so much more to this. We don't get it from this particular package because it was very narrow. But I said, we need to find out as much as we can about this story. And then finally we did. And a story, this is the kind of story that, like, whenever, if you retire and you're ever telling war stories, this is the one that we will talk about for the rest of our lives. It's unreal.
But you can't, I've learned you cannot tell it in 20 seconds in an elevator with someone. If they're like, why are you in Arizona? I'm like, well, sit down.
You got a couple hours. I'll try to explain it to you,
Right.
but it's amazing. And by the way, great work that you've done from the beginning here, Nate. And it's so appreciated by all of us who aren't like in it every day like you were. So we were able to understand it so much better. And that's because of the job that you did. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. And we also need to give your team credit because you guys are the ones giving us all the video feed. It's a very underappreciated task by many in the media to show up. You cover the costs of that. You plug in, you let all of us take it. So all of you watching at home, thank Court TV for doing that with this trial and so many others that are always happening around the country.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. We love doing it. We love being in there. And, when we don't have control of the courtroom, I'm like, I get a little edgy.
Right.
Like, well, whose cameras are in there? I'm like, oh, no, not them. No, not them. So, but it's good. Yep.
Thank you. Anything you want to add?
No, just great to see you. And how's your daughter doing?
Doing great. Still doing her interviews. And in fact, I think you've interviewed Cece Moore, the DNA genetic genealogy lady. She solved a bunch of crime. Anyway, she's going to interview her real soon.
Oh, Cece is amazing.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She's like a regular on us because we have like 3 cases that we're using this genetic genealogy on. So every time we talk about it, we need her in. And she's really, she's one of the leaders in the whole field. So it's great to have her on. And
you'll be at CrimeCon, I'm assuming. I know it's a few months away, but.
Yes. So I'll be at CrimeCon with Court TV, obviously, but also I'm bringing out my buddies. We do the Tangent podcast on Fridays on my YouTube channel. And these are 2 guys we did Court TV radio together. When Court TV radio was on Sirius XM, we would do the morning show. I was the host. Jonesy was sort of my sidekick, and Al was our regular guest that we would have on all the time. And, we all grew up in Jersey. We're all almost the same age, and we all like grew up with the same life, but in different places. And we text all the time, and it's like our opportunity to get together once a week and talk true crime. But they're coming out to CrimeCon, and we rented a house, which is like 5 minutes from the venue. So you got to come over one day. We got a hot tub up on the top.
Oh, nice.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
That's great. All right. For those of you watching, go catch Vinnie and his friends at CrimeCon and with Court TV. Sweet. Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure. Right. My thanks to Vinnie. Always so fun talking with him. He always has such good insight. And my wife says he has the best skin. We saw him at CrimeCon. She's like, your skin's perfect. And he said, you know what the key is? A vino. He uses a vino and puts it on his face. It'll be fun to see him again at CrimeCon. But by the way, if you want to go, you can use the promo code Eaton, EATON, at CrimeCon's website, and you get 10% off a standard badge. I don't get paid for that. I'm not a sponsor or anything, but I do want to let you know that there's that. And I do want, speaking of sponsors, I do have to mention Alan Browning here with Browning Law in Idaho Falls. Him and his team of he and his attorneys are defense attorneys in Idaho Falls. So if you're looking for some help there, you can go visit their website, and we appreciate them sponsoring and helping us out here on Courtroom Insider. Now for the guest you've all been waiting for, my wonderful wife, Erica. And believe me, she has it 10 times harder than I do here in Arizona. With the 3 kids at home, you know how it is, moms. I don't know. I pretend that I know. I have no clue. I do know because Erica went on a cruise last year for 3 days and I nearly died. It was just insane. Everything you have to do. So please think and pray for Erica and all the single moms out there and single dads that do it alone. My hat is off to you for sure. But I spoke with Erica just a minute ago on Zoom just to hear her thoughts about the trial so far. And here is what she had to say. All right, honey, you ready for this? Everybody's been dying to know where you've been.
Where have I been?
Yeah.
Here in our house.
Have you been watching much of the trial?
I have watched bits and pieces. Thanks to some clever editing by a fancy reporter I know, I have seen the highlights.
And what are your thoughts overall so far?
Well, train wreck mostly. I think that Lori has done better than I thought she would do representing herself, but also I think she goes off on some real weird tangents about things like chicken enchiladas. So I don't know if she's doing a great job re-questioning witnesses, if you will, but she is at least trying.
Did you catch her opening statement where she said, this is not a crime. A family tragedy is not a crime. It's a crime.
I did hear that.
What did you think about that? Is that a pretty solid defense line that she could carry throughout?
Well, we've heard this whole family tragedy story before in previous trials, that everything just happens to be these family tragedies. And I think how many tragedies can happen to one person? So that will be an interesting thing she tries to do if that's really what her defense is, that it's just a family tragedy and not that she has planned and orchestrated all of these things.
Yeah. What did you think when she questioned Nancy Joe, the woman that went on a date with Charles?
I don't know how to describe that, honestly. Was it jealousy? Was it just trying to get under somebody's skin? I don't know. I mean, she obviously was very she had a lot of questions for that and then had no questions for some people I thought she would have follow-up questions for.
Yeah. Vinny just made an interesting point. He said that Lori could have maybe scored some points had she tried to show that Nancy Joe that they're on the same side. Like, oh, Charles lied to you too? Charles didn't tell you the truth here? Like, but she couldn't help herself. Which I hadn't thought about that before. Had Lori really, been like, oh, so he didn't tell you this. Yeah, he didn't tell, done it in a different manner.
Sure. But I don't know if it also that, well, I could see that being a good strategy. I feel like that is not great for her to paint the victim in a poor light, which I guess is what you want to do if you're trying to get off.
Right. Well, her whole defense is Charles was the bad guy, or it could be that Charles was the bad guy. He was going to attack Tylee. He attacked me. It was all self-defense. He had anger issues. Had she beat that drum? I don't know if she's done that consistently throughout the trial.
I don't think she has done that consistent enough to really claim it, but maybe she will when it's her witness's turn.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to add?
I've been craving chicken enchiladas ever since this
Just,
trial started. Gosh darn it. And maybe I'll make them for our kids later.
we could ask everybody to send in their best chicken enchilada recipe.
I actually have a really good one, but our kids don't like enchiladas, so.
And you know that I don't really either.
I know. So anyway, I'll just have chicken enchiladas by myself.
I do like green chili chicken chili. Wait, I like chicken chili, the white chili.
Okay.
And when Justin and I went to dinner the other night, it was a Mexican restaurant, and we both got fajitas, and we both said maybe we should have gotten the enchiladas, but
there you go.
I mean, maybe that was Lori's attempt to try to break through to her brother, have a brother-sister type moment.
I just thought it's because she is vain and that she just really wanted to be like, those are my famous enchiladas. You don't like this? You can cut this if you don't like it, but I feel like she once emailed you about chicken enchiladas.
Oh, I'll have to go back and look, but
so it's a sense of pride to me that she really is very proud of these chicken enchiladas. And you don't remember my chicken enchiladas? How dare you?
She has I'm gonna have to look at that. She has talked to me about her food. Yeah, about her recipes and things.
So saying.
So, what type of dishes are we known for when we go to family gatherings? We don't have something we always bring, right?
No, we always just bring the rolls because we're always coming from
Oh, for Thanksgiving, right? We're always the ones traveling. Maybe a pie.
I was trying to think something else about the case. I can't remember now. Anyway,
Something that stuck out to you.
there was something, but it has left my memory.
Do you think she'll take the stand?
Ooh, do I think she'll take the stand? I don't know. Do you think she'll take the stand? You would have a better grasp on that than me.
I think it depends on the day. I don't think she will. Maybe she will, just simply because she can say whatever she wants in her opening statement, which she did. Closing arguments, she can say what she wants. If she takes the stand, that opens the door to the prosecution. Hey, buddy. Say hi.
There's kids all over the place in here.
Are you in Christmas PJs? But it's Easter.
I fed them all dinner. We're all eating dinner in the other room, but they clearly have finished now and they have fed me.
I wish I was there to give you a hug, dude. I will be in a few days.
Yeah.
Yep. Couple more days.
Oh, what was it? Now I'm just gonna look like a silly talking head.
That's okay. You're more than a talking head. You're a beautiful talking head. Thank you, honey, for coming on and humoring me. She is always so willing to do what I ask, and I appreciate that. Erica is such a perfect wife for me because we never know like what we're going to be doing or where I'm going to be, or if someone calls up and says, "Hey, do you want to go out to New York and talk to Drew Barrymore and have your daughter be a correspondent on her show?" Sure. Where Erica's like, "Wait, what?" So anyway, we have a lot of fun together, and it'll be nice to be home. It'll be nice to be home. I'm going home this week on Thursday for Easter weekend. That was pre-planned to go home for Easter, and we'll see where we're at with the trial. Maybe we'll have a verdict by then. I don't know. So thank you, Erica, for being on there. We do want to take a moment here and remember Charles Vallow and talk about him and how much he loved JJ and how much he loved providing for his family. I think Nancy Jo did a great testimony about what type of man Charles was, with providing for his family and providing for himself. And tonight we recognize him and honor him and think about him today. All right, I got a couple of shout outs here. The Murder Buddies. What? Is it possible to get a shout out to the Murder Buddies? It's a morbid sounding name, but in reality, we're 8 people from all over the world who met in the YouTube chat. Wow, during Lori's first child became wonderful friends. It goes to show that bad things can bring wonderful people together. Murder Buddies, I'm sending my best to you. I'm so glad you met through our chat on YouTube. It's amazing to me how many people are meeting through our chat. And if you're on the chat right now, say hello to your friend and neighbor, because Peggy tells me all the time, like, yeah, people are hitting it off. What we need to find is someone who meets on our chat and then gets married. And if that happens, I will try to come to your wedding. Or I'll send a video message or something, and we'll send you East Idaho News shirts, because that would be incredible. So hello to the Murder Buddies. Hi to Tiffany Bennett, Mike Adams, Dina Newell, Sherry Monroe Varner, Casey Shepard, Taylor Lee Atkinson, Chuck Huber, Lexi Dukes, and Lauren Morrison. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it, truly. Cities, Japan, that's a country, but hello to Japan. Willis, Texas, Eagle River, Alaska. That sounds beautiful. Eagle River. Belgium, Cathedral City, California, Peoria, Illinois, Lake Charles, Louisiana, Pine Valley, California, Canada, and Australia. So great to hear you all watching. Okay, we're going to jump over to our questions. I might have to cut things a little short tonight because I got to go do laundry. The hotel I'm in, the laundry machine doesn't work, so I'm going to head down the street. There's a laundromat, which I haven't done the laundromat since I was in college, so I'm looking forward to it. You know what? Actually, because of that, and I'm looking at the time now, I think I'm going to hold all your questions for tomorrow. I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow. I'll probably do a live video on the way to the courthouse in the morning and at lunch too, as we continue on with Lori Vallow Daybell's trial. Have a great night. Thanks for watching Courtroom Insider.